How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud series. And Daf Chav Daled, Daf 24 of Masechta Gittin. Friends. Today we are finishing the second parak of Masechta Gittin and beginning the third parak of Masechta Gittin. It's going to be another two Mishnayos day. I think it is interesting enough stuff. Friends, let's jump in. We're on Daf Chav Gimel Amud Beis, about 2/3 of the way through the Amud at the new Mishnah, and the Mishnah says as follows: Afanoshim she'ena ne'emanus lomar meis baila ne'emanus lahavi es gito. So we learned in Masechta Yevamis that there are certain women who would not be trusted to say to a married woman that her husband is dead. And even these women, and we're going to list them in a second, but even these women who we can't trust because we assume that they have something out for this married woman, that they're trying to get her and make her trip up, so therefore we can't believe them to say that her husband died, because maybe they're just trying to put her to compromise her. But they are believed to deliver a get to this woman so that she will be divorced. So again, even the women who would be not trusted to say that, to report that her husband died, ne'emanos lahavi es gita, they can deliver her get. And here they are: Chamosa, her mother-in-law; Vas Chamosa, the daughter of her mother-in-law; Vitzarasa, her co-wife; Vievimta, or her sister-in-law, right? If her husband's brother's wife, that, if her husband or her brother-in-law die, then they could become co-wives through Yibum. Uvas Baila, or her husband's stepdaughter, or her stepdaughter. Okay. Ma bain get lemisa. What's the difference between get and misa? How come by a get these women are okay to deliver it, but by misa they're not believed to report that the fellow died? Well, because by a get you have the writing of it, right? The writing proves it. Okay. Haisha atzma mevia es gita. A woman can bring her own get. As long as she says, right, but she'll have to say b'fanei nichtav u'b'fanei nechtam. Now, says the Gemara, but one second, one second. Our Mishnah just said that you have these women who are not believed to say meis baila, but even though they're not believed to say meis baila, that her husband died, they are believed to deliver the get. But we have a brayso that says that no, just like they are not believed to say meis baila, similarly they are not believed to bring her get. So again, ve'atani kishem she'ein ne'emanus lomar meis baila kach ein ne'emanus lahavi gita. Amar Rav Yosef, says Rav Yosef, lo kasha, it's no problem, kan ba'aretz, kan b'chutz la'aretz. So Rav Yosef wants to make a distinction between these two braysos, that one brayso is talking about in Eretz Yisrael, and one brayso is talking about in chutz la'aretz. Ba'aretz delav adibura dida kasam chinon mehemna, that in Eretz Yisrael, where she doesn't have to say anything. She's not right in Eretz Yisrael. You don't say b'fanei nichtam b'fanei nechtam. So in Eretz Yisrael, where these women who are not trusted to say meis baila, in Eretz Yisrael, where there is no requirement to say b'fanei nichtam b'fanei nechtam, so we don't actually have to trust them for anything. So sure, let them deliver the get. B'chutz la'aretz, but in chutz la'aretz, what? Where am I? Oh, what? Ba'aretz da dibura dida kasam chinon mehemna. B'chutz la'aretz da dibura dida kasam chinon. But in chutz la'aretz, where they have to say something, they have to say b'fanei nichtam b'fanei nechtam, we have to rely upon them saying that, lo mehemna. There they would not be believed. Amalei Abaye adrabe ipchom mistavro. So Abaye says punkt verkehrt, right? That the opposite would make sense. Ba'aretz, in Eretz Yisrael, ti'osi bal ma'ara mashgechinon bei. That in Eretz Yisrael, because nobody's saying b'fanei nichtav u'b'fanei nechtam, so if the husband shows up and says, "Hey, this document is a fake," so then he's believed, and we have to look into it, right? Because nobody said b'fanei nichtav b'fanei nechtam, right? We've seen before in the Gemara, right, that even in Eretz Yisrael, where you don't have to say b'fanei nichtav b'fanei nechtam, it's still good to say b'fanei nichtav b'fanei nechtam, because that way, if the husband shows up and he says it's fake, we won't believe him because you already said b'fanei nichtav b'fanei nechtam, right? So even in Eretz Yisrael, it's a good practice, but nonetheless, but the point I'm making is that if you're not going to say b'fanei nichtav b'fanei nechtam, then the husband can really make a big mess. And therefore, a mess is exactly what these women want. And therefore Abaye says, look, in Eretz Yisrael, where you don't need to say b'fanei nichtav b'fanei nechtam, and therefore if the husband shows up and says it's a fake, it creates a whole mess. These women are not believed in Eretz Yisrael because they might dafka be trying to make a mess for her. So again, right? So says Abaye, ba'aretz in Eretz Yisrael, where you don't say b'fanei nichtav b'fanei nechtam, the osi ba ma'ar mashkechinon bei, and therefore if the husband shows up and says it's a fake, we now have to scramble to try to figure it out. That we have to be concerned that maybe she is trying to, maybe these women are trying to mess up this married woman. Lo me'emna, in Eretz Yisrael they're not believed. But in Chutzlaretz, the Asiba Ma'arer, that because they would have to say b'fanei nichtav b'fanei nechtam, and therefore if the husband shows up and says it's a fake, lo mashkechinon bei, we wouldn't believe him. Mehemna, in Chutzlaretz, they're believed because they're not really going to be able to do so much damage. All they're going to be able to do is actually make her life easier. That if the husband shows up and says it's a fake, we won't believe him. So in Chutzlaretz, they're believed. Tani kavasi da Abaye, we talk have a braise like Abaye, supporting Abaye. Here's the braise. Reb Shimon ben Elazar, Omer says Reb Shimon ben Elazar, Mishum Akiva, in the name of Rabbi Akiva. Isha ne'emenes lo vigito mikal v'chomer, that a woman is believed to bring her own get, right? A wife could bring her own get, and we learn it out from Makal v'chomer. Umanoshim she'amru chacham ein ne'emanus lomer meis bailo ne'emanus lo vigito. Well, we have these 7 women that we listed in our Mishnah. That I think there were 7, right? Oh, were there 5? Oh, I guess 5. These women who are not believed to say that, right, that your husband died, but they are believed to deliver her get. The wife herself, shenemenes lomar meis baila, that as we learned in Masechta Yevamis, she's believed to say that her husband died. Enudin shenemenes lavikita. Well, then certainly she would be believed to bring her own get, right? If these women who are not believed to say meis baila are believed to deliver a get, she who's believed about herself to say meis baila, for herself to say meis baila, certainly she could deliver her own get. Umimakum shebasa, and then taking it one step further, malahalon, just like by these 5 women, tzrichos sheyomu b'fanenu nichtav b'fanenu nechtam, they have to say b'fanei nichtav b'fanei nechtam, which obviously means that we're talking about in Chutz La'aretz. If a woman's bringing her own get, she would have to say b'fanei nichtav u'b'fanei nechtam. So we see from this, was it Mishnah, Brisa? So we see from this Brisa that clearly we're talking about these 5 women delivering a get in Chutzlaretz, because we're saying that they say b'fanei nichtav u'b'fanei nechtam, and they're believed in Chutzlaretz. Amar Ravashi masnisan amideka. Ravashi says you can also infer it from our Mishnah, Dikatani, that our Mishnah says Isha atzma mevia gita, that a woman herself brings her get of lomar v'chulei. But right, we said that a woman can bring her own get, but she'll have to say b'fanei nichtav b'fanei nechtam. So clearly we're talking about in Chutzlaretz. Shma mina v'Rav Yosef reisha v'seif b'Chutzlaretz mitziyasu ba'aretz. Now 1 second. Rav Yosef, however, said that when we believe these 5 women, right, the women who we don't believe by meis baila, we do believe by get. So we said that we believe them in Eretz Yisrael, according to Rav Yosef, in Eretz Yisrael, where they don't need to say b'fanei nichtav b'fanei nechtam. So Rav Yosef would understand the previous Mishnah that was talking about delivering a get, and we talked about a summa, a blind person. We said that the problem with a blind person delivering a get is because he can't say b'fanei nichtav b'fanei nechtam, which means that we're talking about in Chutz La'aretz. We also said that a wife could bring her own get, which means, but she has to say b'fanei nichtav b'fanei nechtam. So also we're talking about Chutz La'aretz. Rav Yosef, if you want to say that the middle case of these 5 women is in Eretz Yisrael, so what the Reisha and the Seifa is Chutz La'aretz, the middle is Eretz Yisrael. So, and for the Gemara, Reisha v'Seifa b'Chutz La'aretz mitziyasu ba'aretz. Yes, the Reisha and Seifa are Chutz La'aretz, the middle one is Eretz Yisrael. Mimai, how do we know this? Midiktani, from the fact that the Mishnah itself said, Ma ben get lemisa. What's the difference between get and misa? She'aksav mochiach v'lo katani she'aksav ufeh mochiach. It says that the writing is what's important, but not the writing and the mouth, right? The speech, b'fanei nichtav b'fanei nechtam, implying that the middle case is talking about where you don't have to say b'fanei nichtav b'fanei nechtam, i.e., in Eretz Yisrael. That's what Rav Yosef wants to argue. So we said that a woman could bring her own get. Now this is a very interesting, somewhat technical, somewhat interesting discussion about what exactly we're talking about with a woman bringing her own get and having to say b'fanei nichtav, b'fanei nechtam, because Fekti Gemara, Isha mechimati gita liyoda yigar shala. I don't understand. Why is a woman being a shaliach to receive her own get and deliver her own get? The second she receives it from her husband, she's divorced. What do you mean she's a shaliach? Meaning, what does that mean? The husband's giving the get to his wife, and she's not divorced. She becomes a shaliach. I don't understand. The second she receives it, she's divorced. So Omer Rav Huna says, Rav Huna be'Omer lo tisgar shibo ele b'fnei bezdin. So now, basically, from here until the end of the parak, we're just going to be going through different, sort of jumping through different hoops with different scenarios of what exactly is going on here. So Omer Rav Huna says, Rav Huna be'Omer, I'm going to read it again, be'Omer lo tisgar shibo ele b'fnei bezdin ploni. So Rav Huna says, well, the husband says to the wife, you can only get divorced with this get in a certain bezdin. Okay, but sof kimati also migar shala. Oh, fine. So even in that case, though, immediately when she arrives in that bezdin, she's divorced. So Ella Rav Huna rather says Rav Huna bar Manoach mishmei de Rav Acha bre de Rav Ika de Omar la, that the husband says to the wife, ki motis hasam. Well, when you get there, asnache a'ara, put it down on the ground, vishakle, and then pick it up. So she's basically being a shaliach until she gets to where she needs to go. Then she puts it down on the floor to end her shlichus, and then from there she picks it up and receives it. But ihachi havle tzligitech me'al gabe karka. But one second. But that would be a case of the wife picking up the get off the floor. And Rava's opinion is that if he says, if husband says to wife, pick up the get from the floor, it doesn't work because the pasuk says v'nosan biyada, he has to give it to her, not that she's picking it up off the floor. So rather what the husband is saying, okay, so be a shaliach to bring the get to there, and then when you get there, have a shaliach likabala v'kabli as giter. Then once you get there, you now will sort of transform from being the shaliach of me to deliver the get to being your own shaliach to receive the get. Okay? So again, right? So, right, I'm going to read that again. Right? The Omar lo have a shaliach le'olacha, be my shaliach to take it there, ad matis lahasam, until you arrive there, v'chimatis hasam, and when you arrive there, have a shaliach, become a shaliach likabala, to receive it, v'kabli as gitech, and now receive your get. V'ha lo chazu shlichus eitzel habal. But one second, that's a problem, because one of the requirements for appointing a messenger is that it needs to be a messenger who could report back to the sender, right? Right? If I send somebody to, go deliver a document, they can then deliver it and report back to me that it was delivered. But in this case, that's not so. Why is it not so? Because, so the husband is sending her as a shaliach. That's fine. But then we're saying that then when she arrives at the destination, she then appoints herself to be a shaliach to receive it. But then when she receives it, because it's she herself who's receiving it, she basically is nullifying. She's basically saying and it's it's just weird, but she's appointing herself as a shaliach, but then when she receives it herself, because she's the shaliach, but she's also herself, so she's basically receiving it herself, basically undoing the shlichus, and there's basically no more shlichus anymore, and therefore she appointing herself as a shaliach is not actually a shaliach who would be able to report back to herself, because by her receiving it for herself, she's basically receiving it herself and not as the shaliach, but as herself. Okay? Okay, so what the husband is saying to her is, you be the shaliach to take it to the destination, until you arrive there. And when you arrive there, shave shaliach likabala. And when you arrive there, right, so you are going to be my shaliach to bring this get to the destination. When you arrive at the destination, I want you to then, you should appoint somebody to then receive it from you on your behalf. So appoint a shaliach to receive the get for you. You will then, as my shaliach, deliver the get to your shaliach, who is receiving it on your behalf, at which point you will be divorced. So that's all fine and good if you say that a woman can appoint a shaliach to receive her get from the shaliach of the husband. Meaning, definitely a woman can appoint a shaliach to receive her get from her husband. That's fine. But there is an opinion that a woman cannot appoint a shaliach to receive her get for her from a messenger of her husband. The reason being that maybe the husband will be insulted by that. Like, why is she only sending a shaliach? And he will feel, why isn't she receiving it herself? And he will feel slighted, and he will not deliver, that was not what his intention was. His intention was not to deliver it to her shaliach, and therefore that, I guess, messes up the ability for him, I guess, to give the get willingly. And therefore she would not be divorced in that case. But if she sends a shaliach to receive it from him directly, and he decides to give it to that shaliach, well then he's indicating that he's okay with that. But we are concerned that if she appoints a shaliach to receive a get from the shaliach of the husband, maybe he would be insulted by that, and that would cause problems. So therefore, it could be a problem if the husband is sending her as the shaliach, but then she's appointing her own shaliach to receive it from her as her shaliach, but basically then that's a situation of her shaliach receiving the get from the shaliach of the husband, who happens to be her. Okay. So, but according to the opinion that a woman cannot appoint a shaliach to receive her own get from the shaliach of the husband, well, then this case won't work. So, but one second, as I explained a minute ago, the reason why we say that a woman should not appoint a shaliach to receive a get from the shaliach of the husband is because the husband might feel slighted by it. But here clearly the husband doesn't care, because this is exactly the instructions that he's giving. You be my shaliach, and then appoint your own shaliach to receive it from you. So clearly he doesn't care, so it should be fine. Well, but still, that makes sense if the reason is, in fact, out of concern that the husband might feel slighted. But what about the opinion who says that the issue with a woman appointing a shaliach to receive a get from the shaliach of the husband has nothing to do with the husband feeling slighted? It has to do with, it might be confused with a different situation. What's the other situation? Did we have this situation? I don't remember if we had this situation yesterday. I don't think that we did. Wait, did we? I can't remember what's what anymore. But basically, there's a situation that I feel like we did have this situation. But basically, if so a husband can throw a get into his wife's chutzner, and that's fine. But a husband cannot throw the get into his friend's chutzner, and then have the wife buy the chutzner from the friend, which includes the get, and then by taking ownership of the chutzner, she takes ownership of the get. That would not work, because the husband is not giving it to the wife, he's putting it into the chutzner of a friend, and then via the friend, she's buying it, and that would be a problem. So in a certain sense, you can say that like the chutzner of the friend is like the shaliach of the husband, and then when the wife buys it, the chutzner becomes like the shaliach of the wife. So we would be concerned that if we say that a husband can give a get to a shaliach, and a wife can appoint a shaliach to receive the get from the husband's shaliach, well then we might, right, even though that should be okay, But it might be confused with a situation of where the husband puts the get in the chutzner of the friend, and then the wife buys the chutzner from the friend, which is not okay. And out of concern that we might mix up those two cases, so we say that a wife should not appoint a shaliach to receive the get from the shaliach of the husband. So if you say that that's the case, well then this suggestion doesn't work, right? Meaning that if the husband is sending the get with the wife, and then the wife appoints her own shaliach to receive it from her, that doesn't work, because a woman cannot appoint a shaliach to receive a get from the shaliach of the husband. So the Amr la havi shaliach lo locha adamatis hasam. So what he's suggesting is that she should be his messenger to bring the get to the destination. V'chimatis hasam, and when she arrives there, shavi shaliach leholacha, she should then appoint her own shaliach to continue her shlichus, right? So meaning the husband is appointing her as the shaliach, as his shaliach. She is then appointing a shaliach to continue the shlichus of the husband. V'kabli as gitech minei, and then she receives the get directly from that appointed shaliach. V'baisema, alternatively, the Amar law, that he says to her, have a shaliach lolach adamatus hasim, be my shaliach to bring the get to the destination, v'chimatus hasim, and when you get there, Eimar kame bedina, say to the bezdin, b'fanei nichtom v'fanei nechtom, umashve bedina shaliach, and then bezdin has the power to set a shaliach, v'leizvu anialech, and then take it from the shaliach that bezdin appoints. Hajan alach maybe get. We'll come back to you, the second parak of Masechta Gittin. Okay, friends, now we are beginning the third parak of Masechta Gittin. It is somewhat interested, if you are interested in it. Okay, says the Mishnah, Kol get shekasuv shalot l'shum isha pasul bara. If you have a get that is not written for the wife, it is, right, it's not written the Shema, it is pasul. Ketzad, how? Haya over bashuk. If a fellow is walking by in the market, v'shama kol sofrim, and he hears the scribes makrin, and they're reading ish ploni megarish as plonis mimakum ploni, that a certain fellow is divorcing a certain fellow from a certain place. V'amar zeshmi v'zeshem ishti, and he says, "Oh, this is perfect. That is my name. That's my wife's name. This is our town's name. It must be a sign from God. Let me get divorced." V'amar zeshmi v'zeshem ishti pasul l'garish. Sorry, dude. That get won't work. Okay. Yasser Mikain. Furthermore, the Gemara is going to explain what are all these, what makes these furthermores. But okay. Kosav l'garish ishto v'nimlach. What if you have a guy who writes a get to divorce his wife, but then he changed his mind, right? He wrote a get to divorce his wife, but then he changed his mind. Now he just has a get lying around. Mitzvah ben Iro, but then his fellow neighbor of his comes by and he says, "V'amar lo shmi k'shimcha v'shem ishti k'shem ishtucha." Look, we live in the same city. My name is the same as you. My wife is the same as your wife. Pasul l'garish bo. Still, you would not be able to use that get. Yosem Mikain. Furthermore, ha'ilu shtein oshim. What if he had two wives? Vishmosein shavos. Mamish. He has two wives and they both have the same name. Wow. If he writes a get for the older one, now it doesn't necessarily have to be older and younger, but it's just a way of distinguishing between the two. So if he writes a get for the older one, he can't change his mind and use it for the younger one, even though all the details are the same. Furthermore, Amr the Lavler Ksov Le'ezo She'erza Agarish Pasul Agarish Bo. Right? If he says to a scribe, look, just write me a get, meaning he's not saying write it for this one, and then he wants to use it for the other one. He's saying just write me a get, and later on I'll figure out which one it's meant for. That also would not work. So now, so the first two cases in the Mishnah seem to be exactly the same, right? It says, what's the Reisha talking about, right? Meaning, the Reisha is talking about he's walking through the market, and they're writing a get, And he says, oh, those are my details. And then we say, if a guy wrote a get, changed his mind, he doesn't want to get divorced, and then the guy says, oh, those are my details. In both cases, you can't use it. Aren't those the same thing? What's the case of the marketplace with the scribes? Isn't it talking about a situation where they're writing a get for some guy? The guy ends up not needing it. So he says, why don't I use it? Isn't that the same thing as the second case where a guy wrote a get and doesn't end up needing it? Uh-oh. So he says, hey, great idea. Why don't I? Uh-oh. 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 1 second. The heck? Okay, I overheard them saying that they're going to call back in 2 minutes. So let's see what we can do. Okay. So, because of the guy, okay, fine. No. So, Amr Pape, so it says Rav Pape, Pisofin Hasuyin Leslamed Askinan. So it says Rav Pape that the Reisha is talking about where actually they in the marketplace with the scribes, they weren't actually writing a get for anybody. They were actually training. They were in training. Amr Vashi Dekanami Dekatani Sofin Makrin. Right? That also you can infer it from the Mishnah where it says that they're in the market and they were like reading out, right? They weren't, right? It says, they weren't like, right? They weren't reading it, they were reading it out. They were like, as if they were like scribes, they're practicing and learning and you have somebody dictating to them. So he's, right, they're like, they're calling out to them, right, so they're calling out to them what to write. Okay, fine. So therefore, in the first case, right, so they weren't actually writing it for anybody. And in the next case is where somebody actually wrote it for his wife, but then changed his mind. My yoser mi kain. My yoser mi kain. Oh, 1 second. Okay, what are all these like furthermores? So my yoser mi kain. So Tanat ver Bishmal. So it's talking about Bishmal Bishmal. Lo ze shenichtov shelo l'shum gerishin, ela av ze shenichtov l'shum gerishin. So not only in the first case where it wasn't even written as a divorce document bichlal, just for learning, that would be unusable, but even in the second case where it was written as a get, but just for a different person's wife, possible, that's still not allowed. V'lo ze shenichtov shelo l'shum gerishin didei. Now you might say, okay, but in the second case, it wasn't written for him, it was written for somebody else's wife. But even in the next case, where it's written for him, but just for, he's got two wives with the same names, but it's written for, the first wife, he can't use it, right, for the older one, he can't use it for the younger one. I don't exactly understand this last line, but the point is, basically, it's connecting, it's moving on from the third case to the fourth case. That even in the third case where, it was written for him, but he has two wives of the same name, and it was written for the older one, it wasn't written for the younger one, so you can't use it for the younger one. But in the fourth case, where it says just write it for me, stam, right? So it wasn't written for this one or that one. It's just written general, and then he figures he'll decide later. That also would not be acceptable. My time. Okay, so what's the reason for all of this stuff? So ikas of vinosan sefer krisus biyado. So if the pasuk would just say vinosan sefer krisus, that he gives the sefer krisus, sava amino lemute ha'ech kama. So I would say, okay, so a sefer krisus, that excludes the first case where it was just for learning how to write. To lo avid l'shum krisus, it wasn't even written it wasn't made with the intention of being making a separation between this couple. It was just written to learn. So, right, so that would be excluded. But I would think that in the case where a fellow wrote it for his wife but changed his mind, so it was initially made for krisus, just not but for a different husband and a different wife, I would say it's fine. Therefore, it says that no, he needs to write it. You can't have somebody else write it for his wife. It needs to be written for you. V'chasav. Now, okay, so if it says v'chasav, hava minu lemute haidlo iu ka kasav la. So v'chosav excludes the case that we just mentioned, right? When somebody else writes the get for his wife and changes his mind. Aval yesh lo shtei noshim di'u kakosiv lo emar kosher. But if he has two wives and he's the one, he's writing it, I would say that is kosher. Because v'achmana lo lishma. It says no, it has to be lishma for that wife, right? And therefore, if you wrote it for the older one, you can't use it for the younger one. V'seifa lomali. And what's the deal with the last case where he writes it stam? Is akamashman de ein breira. It teaches us that there's no breira, that you can't decide after the fact. Breira, of course, we've learned about in the past. We're going to do a deep dive into breira tomorrow. But that is talking about, right, you can't just say, write a get stam, and then whoever ended up giving it to memele means retroactively that's who it was supposed to be for all along. No, we don't say that. You have to write it specifically for a woman and give it to that woman. Alright, friends, that was daf, what daf was that? Chav Dalet, I think, of Masechta Gittin. I hope you enjoy. Peace out.